Hello, good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise today. I'm Chamberlain also.
I understand it, but good morning and welcome. Today is November 20, it is just one of those days that we're grateful that we have live. Good morning and welcome to the program. I'm Ayo Market. Did I say November 20? No, it's November 23. Welcome to the program.
Okay, that is interesting. So it's going to go on your record books. The date. Are you trying to take the hands of time back?
No, maybe I'm talking about 2024.
But you know, okay, who knows? You know, it just draws attention somewhat to what's going on in Kano. I mean, yesterday we looked at some matters in Lagos about the procurement questions and how they all expected so much. And, you know, some of our panelists did say that the audited reports of the state, for how many years? I think they said for almost a decade, they haven't seen it. So it did raise huge questions. Integrity test, how they come across to so many people. And, you know, and then there were several matters, too, that came up about the way government agencies manage resources. Yes, they tell us tighten your belts. We're going through some economic turbulence. They tell us, well, you had to make sacrifices owing to the removal of petrol subsidy because it wasn't achieving the aim that it was supposed to. Certain people seem to be, you know, filtering that away. And then, you know, when you do business, how those tax agencies, the question of multiple taxation is huge, by the way. And they come down very hard on you. They ask you for all sorts of documents, your edited report, your tax compliance. You make sure you do all of those because if you don't, you will face the music. And then you see government agencies who don't even, it comes across as though they could care less about some of these things. From, is this some time ago when the Senate did host a director general of an agency, and when they are fully funded, they still go ahead and spend almost all the monies they make, and you ask yourself, why is this flagrant disregard of the rules? And so they have to be seen, and then they also have to, not just from their own perspective, this accountability, it's got to be seen to be everyone. They have to be transparent. So if states don't make their budgets public, of course you'll ask questions as to why is that the case? What are they hiding? So it is indeed an important one for the media in this country to keep their searchlight and focus on states. Much as we do what we can for the federal government, we also need to ensure that states also fulfill their own end of the bargain. Because, you know, you say that time and again, if all else goes, even if it's 60, 70% well in different states, you know that the economy will feel it. You know that if they hunker down and ensure that economic policies in those states, cottage industries are all there up and running, you know that the impact will be here. So, yes, much as I think the Lagos State House of Assembly saying they're going to do what? Conduct an investigation, they say. All right, I guess it remains to be seen. But importantly, they must also know that, look, if it's public funds, it's not enough for them to clamp down on organizations and ensure that they do their part. They also got to lead by example.
You know, Chamberlain, the revelations from Lagos State or about Lagos State is quite the eye-opener. And let me just hope that everyone else is taking a cue. And you are not unaware, of course, that since that revelation came about Lagos, a whole number of states have also been in the eye of the storm, so to speak. Abia State, people have mentioned. Ekiti State is also in the news. Which other state is it? Osun State is in the news. Ondo State is in the news. Benue State is in the news. And the list goes on and on. That's an important question you asked Mr. Elemo yesterday, talking about, the parameters with which they conducted their research about that produced what they called the subnational audit efficacy. You asked what the parameters were which they used to score governments at the various levels. The number one on the list is the audit legal framework. And in it, it talked about operationalization of financial autonomy, activation of administrative independence, transparency in the process of appointing the Auditor General, security of tenure for the Auditor General of the state, and legal mandates to publish audit reports online, and several others. Now, look at that last one, legal mandates to publish audited reports online. And he made a disparity between, a report and then, audit report. Please, if you missed that program, you should go and watch it. It's on our YouTube channel here, Channels Television. So it is an eye-opener, and one of the things that we've seen is that citizens can ask questions. As Mr. Doherty said yesterday, everyone else is asking questions, raising the issues. The only difference within him and anyone else is that he's a politician, and that really shouldn't be. The number one office in the land is the office of the citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is it, because that's the fellow who employs the person we call the number one citizen in the country. And one thing we have seen so far is that at least this president has demonstrated that he is interested in listening to people so far. But we're still waiting for him, by the way, to listen to us on the appointment of those politically exposed, shall I say, resident electoral commissioners to INEC. So that said, how about more focus on the state governments, particularly in their roles with the funds of local governments? How about that? I mean, we have helped, I dare say, Chamberlain, we have helped the federal government to get its balance, get its rhythm. So much attention to the federal government, and everyone now seems to behave one way or the other. There is that dichotomy, clear autonomy between the federal, the executive and the legislature, as well as the judiciary. At least, whether or not it's what it seems, that's another thing altogether. But it's so largely merged in the states, where even the members of the House of Assembly are afraid to go against the state governor. But guess what? As I have said countless times, the legislature in the state is listed first before the executive. There's a reason for that. I don't think it's a happenstance that the Constitution arranged it that way. I think it is deliberate. It is after all of those that we have the local governments. And even in the local governments, the legislature comes before the chairman of the local government. So what is happening with the funds to local governments as well? Let all the states do the needful about these things, because that is where development happens. Are you aware, Chamberlain, for instance, that at the local government levels, they have security councils, they have security meetings. This is where we have, they usually engage the traditional rulers and the community leaders, community development associations. Without the requisite funds that they need, we will continue to be vulnerable as far as security is concerned. So who is asking these questions? Part of the issues that came up from the Lagos State revelations is that it is from the state government that budgets are being given to local governments for one thing or the other. That shouldn't be the job of the state government. That's supposed to be the job of the chairman of the local government. So exactly where are all these things going? And it's not just in Lagos, as the revelations came up yesterday. It is across almost, if not every state in the country. So who is asking the questions? We are. And we have to do everything we can as citizens of this country to hold our governments to account and ensure that they do the jobs for which they were employed by us. Back to you, Chamberlain.
You mentioned the judiciary in passing. Well, that's part of what we'll also focus on here, because people ask me questions of the judiciary. I'm like, look, I don't know. I guess it's part of what we'll also focus on, as we did highlight. Yesterday you saw the protest in Kano about their impression of what's going on with the judgment, and then you saw, of course, different perspectives from lawyers, what they expect, and so we hear former leaders across the board, after they've left office, they come up with very interesting suggestions. Some of them want to see the institutions work a lot better. And one thing that sticks out, is that, while they happen to be in office, you see them put pressure or make very serious efforts at weakening the institution so that it doesn't hold them accountable. And then afterwards they think, oh, actually it could be a lot better. But for this kind of thing, I just wonder sometimes if judges look at, of course, they're members of society, I reckon, but even though they say what happens in the court of public opinion doesn't, I guess we'll keep asking that question, has no bearing, as they say, in determining the cases before them. But for those kind of scenario, how does justice being done or being seen to have been done weigh on this scale, looking at that one? So that is part of what we'll be asking today. So it's going to be incredibly important that they come across as society ones, the noble profession. But we'll focus on that partly, and then also take a look at what happens in the economy. Some of the policies that the government is taking, what impact is it having on you? Because I think that's the ultimate test, basically, in terms of what they think they've done, whether or not they should be in the, Guinness World Record? Okay. Let's take a look at some of the dailies this morning. And we're starting with Daily Trust. They focus on what you've just seen there. Appeal Court insists on Governor Yusuf's sack, admits errors in certified judgment. And then you see protests rocks Kano. NNPP approaches Supreme Court, rejects request for CTC retrieval. Oh, there you go. I don't think this should surprise anybody, them rejecting this one. And then judgment read in court more important, ascribed to the APC. Contradictory verdict, embarrassing, scandalous. Yadudu Balana. And then the image you see on the front page there is part of what was mentioned in that opening sequence. Some NNPP supporters in Kano protesting over contradictions in certified judgments of appeal court yesterday, the paper so captioned. So that's what you see right here. And then unfortunately you see this one here, 25 killed in Niger road crash. Yeah, I know. They always tell you drive to stay alive, because better to be late and delayed, all of those. But there you go. That's Daily Trust this morning. But just before we exit Daily Trust, how Army police clash led to inspector's death in Adamawa. Look, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, we know we've highlighted this kind of matters and called the attention of the authorities several times, because it always comes across as though when these kind of things happen, these are supposed to be law enforcement agencies. They act as though they are above the law. It was in Kaduna a couple of days ago when some officials of the Air Force were said to have gone in to free some of the inmates from EFCC custody who were under investigation for fraud. And then, of course, if members of the public see that all the statements notwithstanding, you send a wrong impression to them thinking, oh no, if it's us, let him go. So will fraudsters now begin to flood the services because they think that, okay, they're going to give me cover. They may likely give me cover. So you never know. And will this scenario, will it ever be properly looked into and appropriate measures meted out to the erring officials? You will ask that question because it's not the first, not the second, and it keeps happening. And so our society cannot afford to take this as a norm. Should never, ever. That's the trust.
That comment that you're making, Chamberlain, raises a lot more questions, than is even obvious, given that sometimes one agency of government is, quote unquote, harassing some citizens, and another one comes and tries to overturn the decision of one right there in the face of the citizen. I think, generally our law enforcement agencies should recognize that when they wear that uniform, they're not wearing their house clothes. They're not wearing mufti. They're wearing the federal government of Nigeria. And it is not something you should just use to take undue advantage of people. Anyway, as you said, enough said. Well, one other issue that's going to be on the news, in a part of our conversation this morning, is on the front page of the Nigerian Observer this morning, and it's talking about the MTEF. Senate passes 2024-2026 MTEF FSP amidst economic challenges. What all of those mean, you'll find on the front page, and it continues. I think all of it is right there on the front page of the paper this morning. Check the details right there for your own liking. It is something very interesting that for those who are interested in what's happening in Nigeria, you definitely want to know. MTEF, by the way, is medium-term expenditure framework. Medium term, so this is just about 3 years now, 2024, 2025, 2026. Find all of those details, continue on the front page of the paper. Above the nameplate, Edo to become major beneficiary as Nigeria, Germany seal $500 million gas deal. What all of that means, you'll find on the front page. It actually continues on the inside pages this morning of the paper. So, with that $500 million gas deal, how is that going to benefit Edo? According to the story, if you're curious, find the details on the front page. It continues on the inside pages. There's another one. Firm's exploration of iron ore for battery production raises hope for economy. This, as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking at opportunities, I'm looking at jobs, I'm looking at self-dependence for us as a nation. Yeah, we've raised that issue quite a number of times. Is it ever going to be possible for Nigeria to be self-sufficient in a number of things? Absolutely. If we have what it takes to produce iron ore for batteries, to explore iron ore for batteries in the country, I'm just wondering, what the value chain is going to be like for everyone who is involved. Several other stories I'm very sure you'll find on the inside pages of the Nigerian Observer this morning.
I'll take a look at Vanguard next. Kano, we stand by our verdict, sacking Governor Yusuf. Appeal Court. NNPP files appeal as Supreme Court wants NJC to probe appeal court judgment, insists CTC confirms its candidate Yusuf won on appeal. There's no confusion ascribed to the APC. Demands CTC of appeal court judgment. Appeal court registrar dismisses controversy trailing CTC of judgment, cites its clerical error. Protest rocks Kano. All of that in the mix here with this lead story on the front page, which, several other dailies are focused on. But above this one, you get to see 2023, Edo, Ebonyi, Anambra top list of electoral offenders. So what does that then suggest? Okay, why I deserve to be listed in Guinness World Records. Tinubu, one of them images, the videos, the narrative that was trending yesterday, and oh dear, you need to see, the part where he did say, look, because of his economic reforms, he should be in the Guinness World Records, and the jury still out on that one. They then went down and looked at some of his speech, what he said he was going to do, the policies that have been pronounced, the impact, the kind of results people have, and then the bits where he says, look, if that doesn't happen, he'll find a way to insert himself there. That didn't come off right with lots of people because they thought, wait a minute, what? Is it that there's supposed to be set rules for GWR to get people in? So if you don't meet those criteria, how do you plan to insert yourself in it? So, of course, different narratives. And of course, people coming off the general election just thought, oh, this is not going to be INEC. This is set rules and standards where no one can just go in there and force or insert themselves. But did it also mean, well, I have to do a lot more to ensure you're forced to recognize me? So interpretations differ, but saying I'll find a way to insert myself there. Wow. That's Vanguard.
Well, interestingly, what a number of people would look at is, hey, was that part of his speech? Clearly not. Maybe just one of those things. I'll put it in the docket of a joke, Chamberlain. But hey, the Guardian newspaper this morning is talking about something really serious, and there's no laughing matter whatsoever, because it's something that has been ongoing for quite a while. Look at the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Poor funding raises concern for 270 new private varsities. That story you'll find on page 6 of the paper. Now look at what it says. Total number of universities may rise to 528, among which 418 are private owned. That's one of the, call it the writers on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Between 2018 and 2022, over 5 million candidates who applied for admission were unable to secure placement. 5 million were unable to secure placement. And out of 1.8 million candidates who applied in 2022, about 600,000, representing 33.3%, were admitted. So why have so many universities if we can't really take care of them? You know, one of the things that stands out for me, which we may have lost sight of over the years, is the primary function of university, of the university. It's supposed to be the place where all of the ideas come. That's why in the, I think in the 80s, a good number of people in the cabinets of the federal government came from the university system. You just went, pick them, and then they applied themselves to that. Maybe we'll be able to even raise that in the course of our program this morning. But that's it right there. I'm hoping I will be able to let you see that one. It's the front page of the Guardian newspaper. And this just one more. Senate laments cyber threats to digital economy. $500 million yearly loss. Senate laments cyber threats to digital economy and $500 million yearly loss. Doesn't sound like good news. That's the Guardian newspaper this morning.
On to New Telegraph. Nigeria facing worst economic crisis in history. Subscribe to Abdullahi. Says there's need for NAS committees, FG, to work out ways to get economy back on track. And then you see oil theft, the greatest threat to Nigeria's economy. Subscribe to Abbas. So when you see these kinds of narrative, and then you see the previous one where the president says he deserves to be listed in Guinness World Records, some of his policies, economic policies, and put in place. And then you see another narrative saying, no, this is the worst. So see why perception is people's reality here on this kind of matters. So that's why those set records, the standards that you need to fulfill, they're just defined, clearly defined. But if this is the case, we'll see. We'll get economic perspective on some of these matters as well here today on this matter. And then you also see above this lead story, Middle Belt Forum to Tinubu, give military free hand equipment to tackle insurgency. Okay. First, look, did they complain of not having free hand or being shackled or hampered? And then if you talk about equipment, I think part of the reason why they went to the House of Reps the other day was to also get an assessment of where we are, what's happened to the funds or the resources. I know they always talk about, look, if it's security votes or budgets, you will discuss it behind closed doors because of, sensitive matters. We don't want everybody to know. How do they then ensure that the public has the sense that all the funds that are allocated for security purposes across board, both at the federal or state levels, are utilized judiciously? How? Because, I mean, even in the full glare of the public, the budgets, the funds budgeted, supposedly openly, and you hear questions, of course they would ask how much more, the ones that are quote-unquote behind closed doors, questions of integrity. Here we are talking about audited reports, not just statements, audit reports of states, local governments. Has anybody ever seen any of those these days? Yes, maybe better than mine. So, yeah, that I think that will be it with New Telegraph this morning.
Switch to Business Day newspaper, and what do you have on its front page? It's interesting that on the one hand we're saying in the New Telegraph that we have worst economic whatever, strenuous economic circumstance, and then you see this one. NLNG dividend to NNPC hits 8-year high. Then you wonder, so where is what going? Output decline threatens record revenue. Find the details of all of that. What does that all mean? On the front page, it continues on page 20. Now, right beside that story is an interesting one for you. In Lagos, better traffic behavior can save Lagos 4 trillion naira yearly. What does that mean? That if we behave better, we will save more money? What does that mean? Better traffic behavior. This is definitely not talking about government, but hey, that's what you have right there on the front page of the paper. Above the nameplate, Nigeria's food system under growing strain. The thing that one of the questions that I want to ask is, how far, Chamberlain, with the federal government's declaration of state of emergency on food production in the country? Because if we're still having this growing strain, doesn't that raise questions about whether or not that initiative of government is even going anywhere? That's the Business Day newspaper this morning.
I think before we look at Tribune, or is it this Nigeria, that comment that the president made about him deserving a list to be listed in the Guinness World Records, it kind of set, much as people were asking questions, but there are also questions as to, okay, does he get direct feedback and in terms of what people are feeling out there, the impact of economic policies? I know in one breath you hear him say, look, some of these times it will be tough. In tough times there will be challenges, but it will be okay. So you hear that kind of narrative and you think that, all right, he has an idea of what's going on, meaning we know where we ought to be, or similarly, at least far away, in a manner of speaking, to where we ought to be. Then if you then hear, it's been this GWR, and you think, okay, what are we missing? Maybe that's why we'll revisit that comment again in the course of the program.
Quick point, Chamberlain. One of the things, the reason I say I would put it even if he's not joking about it, I would put it in the docket of a joke, and here is why. For instance, when the president said he removed the fuel subsidy, did he? Because there was a video clip of Mr. Babatunde Fashola, minister at the time, saying that the subsidy had been removed earlier this year. I think it was way before the elections. I think it was maybe even December last year. That as far as the federal government is concerned, subsidy had been removed, and that the terminal date for it was removed. It's just like you switch off the fan and the light is going out. It will stop at some point. So as far as I'm concerned, and I've said this quite a number of times, so when the president said on May 29 that subsidy is gone, he was not saying something that was new. It was already gone before he came into power. That's according to what the federal government at the time said. So saying, please, how many presidents do we have in the Guinness Book of World Records for their economic policies? I don't know, but hey.
What I think Ms. Fashola meant is that, yes, it's in the law, the PIA, the Act provides for it. Then what I then think that the president meant is he implemented it, because the former president suspended implementation of it up until a certain time, which you talk about the terminal date, because he felt if we go ahead and implement it, the sufferings will be huge. But we later found out that it was just more than that, because Mr. Shehu, Garba Shehu, former spokesperson to the president, was also quoted to have said, look, if we did remove this fuel subsidy, would this government have won elections? They may not have won elections. So there were political considerations as well on that kind of matter. So it's all out there for everybody to see. So if he says, I implemented it, I think something that perhaps they might have felt several people tried to implement, they couldn't do it, they couldn't push it all through, but well known history behind all of these things, as it was. So we'll see what happens. Hey, by the way, we encourage you, or write us, let us know what you think of all of this matter. Should the president be in Guinness World Record or not? Talk to us. We're back in a moment. Don't go away.
It's been 5 days since the appeal court delivered its judgment that sacked Abba Yusuf as the Kano state governor. Protests erupted in Dan Agundi area after the certified true copy of the judgment emerged with what some have described as contradictions. The stones-bearing, tire-burning protesters clashed with police personnel who used tear gas to disperse them.
This morning, the concerned citizens of Kano arranged a peaceful prayer session in the Mahaha field. Unfortunately, after the peaceful session, the Nigerian police come and open fire on us. This is open day robbery. The Kano mandate has been stolen by the APC. The APC are trying to turn the Nigerian political system into one-party system. This will never be accepted, and we are calling on the masses to start bringing us food, water, and other supplies. We will not leave this place. We are going to die here.
All of this is in spite of an earlier stern warning issued by the police against anyone planning or taking part in protests.
Government House is number one beat in the state. And combined security officials in the state will never sit down and see anybody going to vandalize any property. So anybody who finds himself to loot or to destroy or to attack people will definitely find it very difficult with us. And equally, Kano State is a place where people from different backgrounds, both Nigerian and non-Nigerians, are enjoying their lives and going about their businesses. We are aware that these people are planning to start looting shops and sending fear to people. Close the market, close the bank, close the schools. That we will never allow it.
Some level of calm has been restored to Kano metropolis, but the tension in Kano following the controversial court's judgment calls for an urgent action for enduring peace.
Welcome back. So we'll be focusing on that matter. We've got two gentlemen joining us. Haruna Issa Dediri is the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice for Kano State. He's on my far right. And then we've got Abdul Adamu Fage, APC Legal Advisor for Kano State on my immediate right. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, first, that protest that happened in Kano, much as there are different perspectives as to why they went on with it, Mr. Dediri, do you think that's justified, their reaction to that?
Thank you very much, and once more, good morning. Of course, it is justified, and let me assure you that with the prevailing situation in Kano, only God knows what next is going to happen. You know, all these things are as a result of what we have seen regarding the issue of the election petition, right from the tribunal stage up to the appeal stage. People are not happy with the way things are. People are agitated. People are unhappy. And tension is building so seriously in the state and gradually. And by the time that everything gets so much saturated, only God knows what will happen. But we pray for the best. And we do not want any breach of the peace. We want peace and order to reign in Kano. But you cannot help, you know, people reacting to what they think is unfair, is unjust, is against the wishes of the people.
Why is it coming now?
Yes, because, you see, there are so many startling revelations. First, people were, they took what happened at the tribunal lightly. But unfortunately now that the case went to the Court of Appeal and a lot of things have now been revealed, they are bound to react. At the tribunal, let me tell you, from the information available to us, you know, the kind of judgment we saw was not what we expected. It is not surprising anyway. The judgments of courts can go either way. But there are so many insinuations. And the information available to us was that the judges at the tribunal never wanted to deliver that judgment they delivered through Zoom. But there was serious interference. And unfortunately, judgment was given by Zoom, very much unexpected, you know, because people followed the facts of the case.
You're a lawyer.
Yes.
You seem to believe that narrative.
Oh, yes, why not? Because I was part of it. I followed the proceedings. I did not take part as a legal practitioner in the case, but I followed it from the start to finish. And I know what happened. And, you know, people took it lightly. They never revolted. They never reacted. But coming to the appeal stage now the case was heard by the Court of Appeal. And the judgment was delivered in the open court. Unfortunately, and most unfortunately, and this is very disastrous for the judiciary in any given society. The certified true copy of the judgment came out.
Yeah, we'll come to that bit.
We saw something which is quite different.
We'll come to that bit.
What I'm saying is...
No, just a minute, we'll come to that part, but it's about the protest. Now, let me get Mr. Fage's response to the protest as well. How is your party taking that?
Well, our party is not taking that as justified. Not taking that as justified on the basis that, you know, protest is allowed in law. It's allowed, but peaceful protest. And I can even now see this protest cannot be perfectly described as peaceful protest. People are using petrol, tires, they are burning it, they are burning places. How can this protest be perfectly described as peaceful protest? So this protest is outside the scope of our laws and jurisprudence. And I'm in fact, when the Honorable Attorney General said it's justified, it baffles me. It ought not to come even from an ordinary man, let alone a learned lawyer, and not only a lawyer, the Attorney General of the state. It's not justified in the sense that there is no reasonable society, no ideal society will certify this protest as justifiable. That is number one. And the fact that the judgment was handed down, it is not the solution for the people to stage on the road and start doing all this, what we have been witnessing now.
You'd rather have a peaceful protest?
Of course, yes. Peaceful protest, if it is worthy of being doing. And even in such situation, there is no reason why even peaceful protests will be carried out. Why? Because this is a judgment handed down by a competent court, by a court of competent jurisdiction. And it is there in our constitution and external laws that whoever is dissatisfied with any judgment, he can challenge that decision at the appellate court. And in this situation, what is the appellate court? This is a judgment handed down by a court of appeal. And there is Supreme Court with justices waiting to receive any grievances from whoever is not satisfied with that judgment handed down by the Court of Appeal on Friday. And to mobilize people.
Mobilize? Who mobilized?
The fact that the people were on the street, they were mobilized. And in fact...
Who do you think mobilized?
No, because there were so many voice notes we received, even from social media, that they are calling for youth to come out in mass so that they will do this protest as has happened yesterday.
Are you saying that the NMPP mobilized the protesters?
In fact, what I'm telling you now, it's there on social media. We have it in our platform. It is everywhere.
So does it being on social media validate it? And so to the extent that you take it seriously and credibly?
No, it's not that we take it seriously and creditably, but the fact that it's there, we had it in the social media. We have seen some people even extending that comment to other people. Some are even members of the NNPP. We have it. In fact, we directed Solomos to even write petition in respect of that. And we are going to attach all the copies and all the voice notes that are there on the social media. That is number 2. And lastly, as I said earlier, when the decision is handed down, just file an appeal, challenging whatever is decided by the Court of Appeal. Okay. But you cannot stage on the street. And if you said people, in fact, Kano people are peaceful people. About 70 to 80% of Kano people will not hit to that advice.
But we've seen members of the APC protest when the judgment didn't go their way. So what would you say to that?
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for this question. The entire protest during that time was peaceful. The entire process, right from the beginning to the end, was peaceful. I engaged in that process. In fact, I read the letter at the INEC. When we went to the INEC office, I was the one that read our outcry, our complaint to the INEC. I entirely read the letter. From the point we gathered up to the point we ended our protest and we returned to our respective destination. In fact, there was no even outcry. In fact, nobody, there was no any person that even, we only held our broom, the sign of our party, throughout the protest, and you covered it. If there is any protest of that kind of yesterday, please, I beg you to put it in your channels TV so that the whole world will see it.
Now you say the protest was peaceful.
Our own.
Yeah, but previously you say that, look, there are processes that people should adopt if you're dissatisfied with the judgment. Go to Supreme Court or go to the higher court.
Yeah.
And that there's no justification for that kind of protest. Yeah. Not even peaceful protest. But here you are justifying.
No, please. I said peaceful protest is allowed. That's my foundation of comment.
But you then said, let me show you, correct if it's wrong. You then said that peaceful protest is allowed, but you don't even think that they should even be protesting because they can appeal the case. Wasn't that what you said?
Exactly that's what I said, but I said I don't think. But a law is allowed. If the law said this is legal, this is justifiable, you can go and do it. I see no reason why I cannot do it. I see no reason why something will bar me from doing it. But I said, I think. But the law allows it, peaceful protest across the globe, including Nigeria.
Mr. Dederi, he suggests that you seem to be encouraging people to break the law. As a minister in Temple of Justice, he said that is clearly not right.
You see, that is absolutely a misconception on his part, and I'm surprised. What I have said is very plain and clear. Now, what is justification? You have what you refer to as legal justification. You also have moral justification. See, the point I'm trying to make is this. We are all human beings. Don't take me because I'm Attorney General, I'm not a human being. I'm a human being. Human beings are human beings. Insofar as there will be impunity, insofar as there will be actions which will definitely, infuriate the people, as human beings, they are bound to react. And what has happened is, of course, a very clear case in which people reacted to what they felt was bad, to what they felt was wrong treatment of their case. It's not that they are not appealing against the decision. After all, when the tribunal gave its judgment, the decision was appealed against. And now that the Court of Appeal has also given its judgment, already our party has appealed against the decision.
Now that's subject of controversy.
Will be appealed against, obviously.
Let's take a look at that point of contention.
There is not only legal justification.
All right.
You have moral justification.
Now let's talk about this.
You have justification because of your existence as a human being.
The bone of contention now.
So now, yes.
Just a minute. The bone of contention appears to be that page 67.
Yes.
Which your party latched on and thought, wait a minute, this page here gives us the advantage, and so why should we even bother so much about it? So that is the page where it says the judgment of the tribunal in petition. It went ahead and listed it, and so NNPP then says, look, this here seems to have gone in a certain way, but all of that controversy played out only for the appeal court. The registrar then put up a statement saying, well, they are standing by, declare the controversy as a matter of fact. That's the chief registrar of the Court of Appeal, Mr. Omo Bangari. He says that what happened in the judgment body was a typo error. It did not in any way invalidate or change the findings and conclusions of the court. He then went ahead and assured that the error will be rectified once parties in the matter file formal application to that effect. He cited the Order 23, Rule 4 of the Court of Appeal Handbook, which empowers the court to correct any clerical error once detected by the court or any of the parties in the matter. So does this put paid to all the concerns that the NNPP has?
Now, if I may be allowed to ask, even yourself and every discernible mind, are you convinced that that excuse that is given is tenable? What is a typographical error? Does it affect one word? Does it affect two words? Does it affect three words? How can typographical error affect whole paragraphs? This is something which cannot be accepted by any discernible mind, as I have said. This is something which is outrageously scandalous. I'm sorry. And it cannot be accepted. And we are not satisfied. All we are saying is that the judgment is very clear. The judgment of the tribunal has been set aside. And that is the position. If you are going to change it, so how are you going to change it?
Wait,
how are you going to change it?
I didn't get that point. Judgment of what? The tribunal?
Of course, the tribunal was set aside.
You can read it.
You can read by the appeal court. You can read it on page 67. As I have said, read it. You will see it on page 67.
Mr. Fage, what do you think of
this? Yes, so what I'm saying is,
you see,
the controversy has now shifted to the Supreme Court. And it will be resolved there. Where are you going to take your application?
So wait, NNPP does not accept this.
Yes?
Are you going to be returning to go and receive the corrected version of the CTC? Would NNPP do that?
There is no corrected version. That is the only version we have as the judgment of the Court of Appeal.
So
we are not aware of any corrected version.
The registrar, you're not taking it seriously.
It is not tenable. It cannot be accepted. Look, either you say clerical error or you say typographical error. In the circumstances, it can never be accepted. No one can accept that.
All right.
Thank you very much. You see, that page 67 is very clear. You see, the judgment is always taken as a whole. You cannot read judgment in part. This judgment is of 72 pages, the judgment of the Court of Appeal. And not only that, there were 4 appeals. The appeal by INEC, the appeal by NNPP, the appeal by Executive Governor of Kano State, and cross appeal by APC. And all the remaining appeals, there was no such clerical error. All the remaining 3, only the one. And even in this one, it has only manifested in that page 67. And even in the page 67, there are 5 paragraphs in that page. And out of that 5 paragraphs...
On page 67?
Exactly.
So do you consider that clerical error then? Or typographical error?
Of course it is indeed.
For 5 paragraphs?
No, you should allow me to...
Go ahead,
in that
please.
5 paragraphs, the 3 paragraphs were even decided in our favor. The first paragraph is that the appeal lacks merit. What does it denote in law? If the court said the appeal lacks merit, the appeal is that appeal of NNPP, and it said it lacks merit, the court, then there is no appeal. So also in another paragraph, it said all the lives issues in this appeal are resolved against the appellant and in favor of the first respondent. In the same paragraph, then the paragraph he is making heavy weather on, the paragraph where they stated that the judgment of the tribunal in judgment number so is hereby set aside. Instead of saying is hereby affirmed, that is clerical error. That is the word. Instead of putting affirmed, the typists, in the course of typing, they put set aside. It's normal. In fact, 2 weeks away, we had one...
This kind of error is normal?
It's normal. It's normal. Apart from Order 23, Rule 4, cited by the Court of Appeal in their rules. In fact, in Abule versus Wari Refinery, the apex court of the land, Supreme Court, handed down decision and said that judges are human beings.
So
and they are not demigods.
So judgment
they are not demigods.
They are full of clerical errors.
They are bound to make mistakes. They are bound to make omission. They are bound to make typographical error or mistake in their judgment or clerical error. As such, they have power. The law invested them with power to effect correction either on application of the party or even suo motu by the court. The court in its own reason can do that. And that rules, Rule 4 of Order 23, made it clear that the Court of Appeal has power to do that correction. And in fact, we even put application yesterday for it to be corrected.
Okay. Application before who? The Court of Appeal has already disposed of this matter. The lifespan of the Court of Appeal lapsed on the 18th. So application to where? Before whom? See, we are not, I don't want to...
Maybe we should hear from him. Application to who?
Yes, to who?
Thank you.
To who? Now, let me finish.
Let him respond to you so you can continue.
Let me finish so that he will take it.
He will just respond to this bit.
Please.
No, okay.
I'm very happy when he said application to who.
To who?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, to who?
Application to the registry of the court, because that is why they said it's typographical error.
Okay.
Wait now. The issue of the court is punctus officio. Let me even
you respond. Don't worry.
Let me even assist him. The court is
just make it.
The whole word. The court is punctus officio when it's handed down.
Just hold on.
When it's handed down its decision.
Yeah.
But in plethora of authority, among it is JGD versus APC. The court, there are an exception to that rule. The court, when there is clerical error, when it handed down its decision without jurisdiction, or when there is misrepresentation of facts, the court has power.
Okay.
Now
to entertain that question. It's not the issue of lapsing of time.
So you can correct that. So go ahead.
I was talking when he chipped
Go ahead.
No, he called upon me.
What I'm saying is, you see, the essence of justice can never be defeated by any manipulations. Let it be very clear.
Manipulations?
Manipulations, yes.
Which manipulation?
No, what I'm saying is when you bring in things to manipulate very real and apparent facts, which will eventually defeat the essence of justice, that cannot be accepted. This is trite law. This is known, in the whole world. Now, you see, what I'm saying is the whole thing that has played out is very glaringly clear. And from the information we have, see, there was serious interference. And that was why this judgment came about the way it came. It was not the initial intention of the judges to deliver the judgment they read out or they spelled out in the courtroom. So what appeared in the certified true copy of the judgment is the real and the well-intentioned judgment of the court of the justice of the Court of Appeal. But because of interference, and this is very dangerous for this country, because of interference, it was so
from who?
obvious. No, of course, from the forces that be. You know what happens. And in fact,
what happens?
Interference. Yes, what happens is that there are people who have interest in this country and who can go to any extent to jeopardize whatever thing that happens in this country because of their selfish political interest.
Yeah.
And that is what played out. So there was interference, and insofar as we will not avoid interference in the business of the judiciary and judicial process in Nigeria, there is bound to be mutiny, there is bound to be disaster. And this is what we do not want. Nobody wants any chaos. Nobody wants any breach of the peace. In fact, Kano has been one of the most peaceful states in Nigeria. And see, what they are trying to do is to put Kano into a very bad light and into a very terrible political situation. And that is going to negatively affect the life of the northern Nigeria as a whole, because it is the nerve center of the north, and eventually and consequently, therefore, it will affect the nation. So we should be very wary and careful.
All right, Ayo, go ahead.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Let me begin with that page, on that same page 27, Mr. Didiri. Just give us some understanding. So the first two sentences on the two paragraphs on that page 67, as we have been seeing on the screen, I will conclude by stating that the live issues in this appeal are hereby resolved in favor of the first respondent and against the appellant. In the circumstances, I resolve all the issues in favor of the appellant against the first respondent. Now, where I'm having a difficulty is the first sentence says the live issues in this appeal are in favor of the first respondent, then all issues in favor of the appellant. Help us understand the difference between live issues and all issues. Mr. Dederi, that's for you.
You see, yes. Thank you very much. Of course, there is bound to be misunderstanding. I think it's as a result of the way that the judgment was hurriedly put in place. You can see the confusion. And you can see why this judgment will have to move forward to be tested. And you can see why we are saying that the mistakes are not mere either clerical or typographical. You see, they are mistakes that touch on the very basis of the essence of the judgment. And it cannot just be swept under the carpet and said, okay, this is a typographical error or clerical error. You have just pointed only one. If you go down the line and you read more, you will even get more confused.
We'll come to those others.
And this is why we are surprised.
Just a second. I just want you to, you're a lawyer, you're Attorney General, so now, what are the basic differences between those two? Live issues and all issues. What are the basic differences? Just for Nigerians to understand.
So what I'm saying, yes. So now, if I may ask, in view of how the way the statements are couched, which one will you take? Are you going to take the first segment of the sentence, live issues are resolved in favor of the first respondent? Or are you going to take the second segment, which says issues are resolved in favor of the appellant?
Okay.
Which one will someone take?
Something your colleague there said.
Is it not confusing?
Yeah, just 1 second.
Is it not
there's something that your colleague said the other time. He said that we don't read the judgment in part, we read it in whole. Do you agree with him on that? Do you agree with him?
No, you see, there are I do not agree with him.
Okay.
Because you see, there are statements and words which have serious imports and implications.
Okay.
which will put the reader of the judgment or any piece of document into serious difficulty.
Okay, the reason I asked that question...
You see, whether you read the whole of the judgment,
yes,
you will come to a situation where you will come across either words or expressions which will put you in a very, very terrible and seriously difficult situation.
Okay, Mr. Dede, we'll come back to those issues. There are a number of other things that I would like to raise. Just a second, Mr. Dede, just 1 second. There are a number of other issues on a few other pages closer to this page 67 that, you know, we'll just want to take a look at so that people can understand what the issues are, but we'll do that when we return from this break. So please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Dederi, let's quickly get to page 65 of that judgment, the one that, you know, the original one. After quoting from the Supreme Court per John Enyang Okoro GSC, and he listed a number of things that he now said at the bottom of that page. Therefore, the adjudged failure by the appellant and the third respondent to comply with the provisions of Section 177 C of the Constitution of the Federal Republic, 1999 as amended, is fatal to their election. What do you think the judge means by this?
Well, I don't know whether you want me just to take my own understanding of that particular statement on its own.
Well,
if you want me to take that statement on its own and say my own understanding, is that is saying that by the failure to comply with the sections of the Constitution, the requirements under the section quoted, that it is fatal to the case of the appellant, I think.
So, is there any other way to read that, Mr. Dederi, other than what the judgment says?
Yes. No, yes. You see, this is where I have a problem. You know, if you take the document and you begin to say page by page, what does this mean? What does this say? Now, it will not give you the totality of what we complain about. What we are saying is that there are so many inconsistencies and there are so many things which need to be investigated and which need to be resolved finally. And I think this is going to be even in the interest of the APC people, the respondents in our appeal. Because, you see, since we are complaining that this judgment does not give any impression that something normal and good has taken place, and we want it to be investigated and confirmed. So what problem have you with that? I don't think you don't have any problem with that. The bottom line is that whatever has been said and whatever anybody has submitted in the course of, you know, submitting either written addresses or even in the course of adducing evidence and the evaluation there too. Now, the conclusion destroys everything that has been built. That is just it. The conclusion, everything might have been said, but the conclusion has destroyed whatever has been built.
Okay.
And this is our opinion.
Okay.
And this is our position. And that is why we said something must have happened. Because this was not the judgment that was initially intended. But there was serious interference.
Okay.
And we keep on saying this because we have reasons to believe that it was interference that caused this problem. And we are saying that such interference should not be allowed in the judicial process in this country.
Okay, well,
it is not going to augur well for the country, for the citizenry, for our constitutional democracy, for the survival of our nation as one nation, as a democratic nation, for the people of this country as people who are patriotic and they want progress in this country. That is what we are saying.
Okay.
That is our complaint.
Just one more issue on that judgment.
It's not a page-by-page complaint of the judgment.
That is why I asked the other time, Mr.
If you continue to take, page by page, it cannot solve the problem. Whatever has been said, whatever has been done, but the conclusion has destroyed the basis.
Well, that's why I asked you the other time if you agreed with Mr. Damo, who said that we shouldn't take a page.
And I said I don't agree.
Okay, but then you are now saying that everything should be looked at in totality. So what exactly are you saying?
Oh, definitely.
But that's what he said. He said everything should be looked at in totality, not in isolated cases. The same thing you are saying now. And he said we should look at it in totality. Are you agreeing with him or not that the judgment should be looked at in totality?
No, what I'm saying, I think our understandings differ, I think. What I'm saying is this, that if you take page by page analysis, it will not solve the problem. But what I'm saying is, assuming everything has been said, from page so-so to page so-so-so, if you take page by page, whatever has been built, the findings and the judgment, I mean the final conclusion has destroyed whatever has been built. And this is what we are saying. Let's go and confirm whether it is genuine or not, whether everything is in order or is not, whether there was typographical error, or there was clerical error, or whatever. Let us find out.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Damo this question, whether he agrees with you, something you said the other time. So, Mr. Damo, Mr. Dederi has said repeatedly that there is interference. Now, he's also said that we shouldn't look at the judgment page by page, because I was going to look at the first part of page 66, which talks about the sponsorship without membership is like putting something on nothing. But do you agree with him when he talked about interference from wherever? Do you agree with him? Could there have been any interference? Is there something the APC did?
Well, I'm not in agreement with him. As for me and as for APC, there is no any interference. There is no any interference in this matter. It's a law now. You don't need to be a lawyer to even understand all what transferred right from the tribunal up to this appellate court. That is number one. Number two, if there is interference, then it needs to be substantiated. It lies in him who made it now known to the whole world that there is interference, now to unveil that interference. But for me, there is no any. And when you look at this judgment, as you even rightly understood from the poser you put to Honorable AG, the judgment needs to be considered as a whole, not in part. From page 1 of this judgment up to the last page, with the exception of page 67, the entire findings, the entire resolution, the entire conclusion of the appellate court, the entire, were in favor of APC. From the first page, after the introduction of the case, after the analysis of the argument of both parties, when the court started making its finding, there was nowhere they made finding in favor of the NNPP throughout the pages of that judgment. That is why we said the judgment needs to be looked at in its entirety, in total, but not in fact, not just singling out one page and said there is this. And even in that page, as I said earlier, there were 5 paragraphs, but only 2 paragraphs favored them. And the reason why I said we need to look at the judgment in its entirety is because that is how you understand the intendment of the judges. What is their intendment? Intendment is to dismiss that appeal. And even that appeal was dismissed in that page 67. And even to understand what is their intendment is to look at the judgment. All
right, gentlemen, we need to wind down.
And you ask one fundamental question. It's very important, sir. This issue of live issues. That is why the court said the live issues are resolved in favor of the respondent. The live issues, that is the issues worthy of being determined.
So let me ask both of you before we go. Nigeria Corruption Index 2020, published by the ICPC. So they say lawyers are most responsible for offering bribes for favorable judgment. And then they spoke to court staffs, judges, and then the corruption index also further indicated that the cases of outright demand and offer of bribes are mostly linked to election matters. Total amount of money reported by the justice sector respondents as corruptly demanded, offered, and paid between 2018 and 2020 in the region of 9.457 trillion, I beg your pardon. So, Mr. Dediri, you kept on referring to forces,
Yes.
unseen forces, interested parties,
Yes.
that this judgment was not the way it was supposed to have been done. And to so many people, that suggests corruption. Would this be part of what you're referring to? Does it lend credence to it?
Yeah, of course. You see, you cannot run away from the basic fact. You cannot run away from reality. The institution that has made its findings and its conclusions must have done that after serious study, after serious scrutiny. And they have their own facts at their disposal. So I will not dispute what they have said. Only that I have respect for the legal profession. I'm a lawyer myself. And I have respect for the judiciary and the judicial process too. So if the indictment there, of course, has any basis, it then calls for.
But is it right for people to say
study.
that, listening to you, they think that you're suggesting that money exchanged hands in this judgment?
There is nothing, probably, there is nothing that has not happened. And you see, there is one thing I always want our people to do, is to desist, you see, from using whatever they have in order to exert their own political influence on their localities or on their
Did NNPP try to influence the judgment in their favor? Did they try? Yes.
No, how can we? We don't do that. We don't do that. And those who do it know that they do it. And you see, the earlier we avoid all these things, the better.
We need to run. So, Mr. Fage, what do you think of this? He says suggests there's corruption in the judiciary.
Well, you see, when you say there is corruption in judiciary, that is outright statement, which need to be substantiated. That is number one. But for this case, I, for one...
What about that report by ICPC?
That's it. Report by?
ICPC.
No, I'm not disputing that report. I'm not disputing the report. But what I'm saying, it needs to be substantiated. You need to come with cogent and credible evidence to substantiate what you said. But this is just saying...
Did the APC try to influence this judgment in their favor?
Certainly no, because I don't know of that. And I, for one, throughout my practice here, I never even make attempt to bribe any judge. Even attempt, talk less of even bribing. But I, for one, but I know if I do, may God not tear my leg next to me. May I not prosper. But like for him now, he said they are. Let him say it. Who and who, when, where, so that all this will be checkmated. This will be taken out, so that our society will be a better one. All right.
Abdul Adamu Fage is the APC legal advisor for Kano State. We also had Haruna Issa Dediri, who is the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice for Kano State government. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on today.
Thank you, and right.
Very grateful.
We'll be back in a moment. We'll focus on the economy. Don't go away.
In the light of the findings, the benchmark oil price of USD 73.96 and 73.76 and $69.9 per barrel be approved for 2024, 2025, and 2026 respectively. The exchange rate of 700 naira to $1, 665.61 naira to $1, 669.79 naira to a dollar, proposed by the executive for the periods 2024 to 2026 respectively, be considered for approval. That the daily crude oil production of 1.78 million barrels per day, 1.80 million barrels per day, and 1.81 million barrels per day for 2024, 2025, and 2026 respectively be approved, subject to NNPCL's confirmation of actual and verifiable deliveries. Those in support of recommendation 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Welcome back. Yes, indeed. Now we turn our attention to economic matters as it affects all of us. And so, as you've seen there, we've got Dr. Kalu, who's the former Minister of Finance. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for letting us wake you up very early this morning on the program.
Thank you. I'm happy to be with you.
Okay, so talking about the economy, there are different things going on, different policies, but at least one of the most recent statements is where the president says he deserves to have or to be in the Guinness World Record for his economic policies. And so that suggests that the policies are having at least an appreciable impact on the people. So, yes, in his inaugural speech as well, he did make reference to how he intends to govern, his style. But I think one of the things that stuck out on that day was the fuel subsidy. So it caught fire. From then on, we had the impact on the petrol price, and the rest, they say, is history. So let me ask you directly, concerning the removal of fuel subsidy, I know you also spoke about it several times in terms of the way and manner it ought to have been done. So considering the impact that is having or having been done, what do you think of what has been done with the petrol subsidy by this government?
Well, once we took that decision to remove subsidies in one fell swoop, it was pretty easy to predict the consequences on the economy. Now, if there is one word that explains all this, is the whole notion of a lag. See, in the economy, even if you are distributing goods that have already been produced, it takes time to distribute. How much more where you have to now plan under different price, interest rate, exchange regimes, financial regimes, to decide what to produce. Yeah, so you mentioned some of the comments I've made before. It was essentially focusing on the necessity to take a decision that takes a full account of the very lags in the system. Lag in production, lag in distribution, lag in production, and so on and so forth. The reason for that, of course, is that things don't happen quite that instantaneously, regardless of your eagerness to execute what you might call a political will to take a decision. You have to still take into account how the system, as it were, will absorb it so that there will be some sort of a seamless impact on the consumers, the producers, the importers, the exporters, and all agents in the system. So this was the thing. But one of the earlier statements I had made was that I was impressed that having made that statement, efforts were being quickly put in place to see how we can now douse it. Well, of course, these efforts too also require a lag to mobilize resources, to channel the resources, and so on and so forth. So this is where it's at. Yes. Okay, and then going back to the issue that you raised.
Go ahead.
You raised about being put in the Guinness Book of Records. Maybe the president is right. I don't think we quite got the extent of his thinking. If you look at Nigeria with the sheer size of our economy, the sheer size of our population, the resources we have, we really deserve a Guinness Book of Records. How we managed to have our exchange rate depreciate from about 1 to 1 in the 80s to over 1,000. That requires a Guinness Book of Records. But I'm not sure that is the way he meant it. I don't think we can award ourselves a Guinness Book for efficiency in the evolution of policies and even worse in their implementation. So I think it depends on where you see it. The important thing is that all of us can own to the real situation we are facing. Whichever aspect of the politics you are on, whether you are in the far opposition, near opposition, or within the government system. This is the time the Nigerians as a whole, consumers, producers, industrialists, financiers, all the youth eagerness to get involved and be taken on board. This is the time we begin to speak the truth to ourselves. That is all I have said. And that's what I will try to do in the course of this program.
Okay, so Doctor, in another breath, we also heard the president say that the essence, the purpose for the removal of petrol subsidy had been achieved. But we then go out there and see the spiral effect that the subsidy removal is having on inflation, goods and services, and generally across board. And yes, they spoke about palliatives and what needs to be done. So from your professional perspective, do you see the whole scheme? Do you see that there's a plan in place with the way and manner that we're going about it?
Well, one cannot overemphasize the fact that there is nothing inherently negative about the use of subsidies. If you took a poll around Africa, or Europe, or America, everywhere, governments, entities employ subsidies as a way to achieve positive encouragement for producers or distributors or transporters, what have you. So we can only judge the success of the removal of subsidy by the effect it has on the objectives we had in mind. Clearly, for sustaining subsidies for such a long period, normally you should manage subsidies so you are still within the price range that is dictated by the market. If you go out of the market in terms of the cost of funds, in terms of interest rates, or exchange rate management in the terms of the share spread that was really abnormal by any world standard. It was abnormal, the share spread of how we were allocating foreign exchange at different prices. And that was why there was all this emphasis on unifying the rate. Unifying the rate so that the saver, the person who is saving foreign exchange, which means saving in Naira or whatever currency, you can translate that currency to any savings into whatever currency you want. So these are the issues. So it may be too early to write it off as not having achieved its purpose, depending on how quickly we can mobilize to produce more in order to moderate prices. If you look at our inflationary pressures, we see that food prices, for instance, have probably risen faster. Just as I said, the only way you can modulate that is if you are able to produce fast, but that is delimited by the factors of production, and weather and technology and distribution and so on and so forth. Or you can bridge the gap that is occasioned by the sharp rise in food prices by importation. There's a lag in importation depending on where that import will be coming from. So once again, we have to be very careful in defending ourselves to be too premature in coming to conclusions as to whether we have succeeded in our objective. Everything takes time. There's no better way to explain this thing than the adage that everything takes time. Even if you are taking what is already in your plate, it takes time for you to even eat it. That is like the minutest form of lag. Not to talk of where you have to decide on what to plant, how to prepare the soil, and the time to tend to the seeds, harvest it. That one, there's very little you can do, despite all the advances in agricultural science. There are set periods for or lags in, whether it's a primary production, mining, or agricultural production, or in manufacturing, or even in delivering infrastructures. We know how long it takes to patch our roads and our bridges. And while they are being done, there's not much you can do but wait for this to be completed in order to improve the efficiency of the system.
All right, we need to just take a breather, but just give us a moment. We'll be back to take on more issues on this matter. Don't go away. Welcome back. We are with Dr. Kalu Ideka-Kalu, who is Nigeria's former Minister of Finance. One of the policies or announcement that the government has made to cushion the effects or the impact of the subsidy on the people is that they plan to have some of the refineries working at the end of the year. And then they've talked about rolling out CNG buses to cushion the impact of transportation cost on the populace as well. So about this petrol having refineries work, which they say will reduce the burden, the pressure on Forex. What kind of impact do you see having the refineries, or at least a few of them, working? What impact will it have on, first, the purchasing power and probably largely on the foreign exchange?
Well, first of all, I think the concept what I had said before, where what you're dealing with is different lags in response. Just like we are talking about what we needed to do about the refineries. Some of the actions will have immediate effect. Like most people think there's a sizable element of fraud in the operation of the system. That one you don't need to have any thoughts about just stopping immediately. Whether fraudulent reports, fraudulent recordings of supplies from local or external sources, those can go quickly. But where you are trying to ameliorate is price impact by things like setting up, reactivating the refineries, which, by the way, we should have done several years ago. So I think another thing I say in parenthesis is that we should not discuss this as if all the faults are at the door of the present administration. We all know that this has been simmering for many years. I remember a few years ago when I also objected to the feeling that you can do a swift removal of subsidy. I say, yeah, you can remove the subsidy, but having allowed it to fester for so long is only proper in economic terms, in administrative terms, to phase it over a period. Quarters, budget years, or even a few years. That is how it's done everywhere. This gives the chance for those who are going to respond, whether in taking over the refineries or in repairing a power station or in providing a more mass transit, which, by the way, we should have done a lot more of all of these things. That's why I said I'm not quite sure why we'll be getting a Guinness Book of Records. It will be for the very fact that everybody could see that these are the things we should have done to avoid the kind of high cost of living and all the hiatus in every single subsector of the primary production or secondary production, manufacturing, and so on and so forth. So yes, the suggestions that was prepared was that we should build more refineries, we should build more modular refineries, we should privatize, whether it is power or refineries, precisely to those who are able to turn these things around. When you've done that, you are able to project the additions to supply of power, of fuel products, and so on and so forth. So you cannot take a decision swiftly, as it were, in the blind. So having said that, my answer is clear that, well, it's going to take us a while to let the station stabilize, but let's be patient, but we have to put pressure so that all those things that come from poor administration, prevalent corruption, and other things that create all the inefficiencies we see in our system. The public, the external investor we're encouraging to come in should be able to see from their own standpoint that we are making good with a lot of the decisions we are making to improve the Nigerian system. This economy should be growing at a much faster rate, certainly way beyond the increase in population growth or even the growth of the labor force. We are way beyond those basic benchmarks for assessing how efficiently we are managing the tremendous resources we have in agriculture or non-agricultural sectors.
Speaking about foreign exchange, the CBN announced the collapse of all windows into the INE window, and they said that was to improve liquidity and also enhance stability in the market. Now, the jury is out on whether or not that is working. So will that singular action suffice? I mean, will it have the kind of impact that it should have? Because in the meantime, I mean, we can all see that at the moment, not exactly what people thought.
Well, you know, the way you even put the question underscores some of the misunderstandings we have. We talk about singular action. There are very few singular actions in a dynamic general equilibrium system. That is the general, like you go to our markets. There's nothing like a single action. If you go beyond what the general equilibrium adjustment, whether you see the graphs or not, that relates abundance of supply or limited supply to the quantum of demand in time frame, you know that you have problems. So it's not a question of singular thing. The basic problem with multiple rates, that it underscores the sheer inefficiency in the distribution of scarce resources. It doesn't have to be foreign exchange. It could be corn, it could be bread, it could be cassava, it could be yams or rice or whatever. If you deviate from what the demand and supply will suggest, then the pressures will come inexorably to put pressure on the system. So we should not be asking the question like that. That already condemns what our policy was taking. And those policies must be fully cognizant of the depth of the problems involved, of the variety of the factors that come to play in creating more supply or in encouraging less demand through all kinds of adjustments in the financial sector. So this we're dealing with a lot of dynamics here. No matter the jargons the economists use, these are the things that the ordinary market women and men in various places, they understand these things. They employ this, they have a sense of it. If you have short supply, the chances are prices will go up. And the seasons allows for some of this to be modulated over the various seasons of the year, and so on and so forth. Yes. So once again, we should be cautionary in judging what you might call the absolute success of the policies. You have to give it time to work itself out through the system. And above all that, policymakers must up in the ab initio acknowledge the intrinsic existence of all the lags that impinge on increasing supply or reducing demand.
Well, Dr. Kalu, thank you for all of this understanding you're giving us. You know, when you were talking the other time, listening with rapt attention, I noted very, very pointedly that you mentioned production, that we needed to produce more. Now, looking at all of the policies on ground, all of the business enabling or environments that we have, the policies of government, including the drive of the federal government since he got into the president, since he got into power, to drive foreign investment into the country. Help us take a general overview of the investment climate in Nigeria and its capacity to produce long-term sustainably for the economy to be able to bear. What is your assessment of that? Because we hear all kinds of things from the organized private sector, that it's caustic, it's not very, very investment friendly and all of those things. Now that the president is asking for more investors to come into the country and invest, help us take an overview of the investment climate, the challenges people may likely have, and what needs to be done to ensure that all things go quite smoothly.
It's not clear. We could do something about it. Can't you say we can't hear?
Can you hear me now, sir?
Well, a lot of it was very low.
Okay.
But I think I can have a sense of what you are trying to say.
Okay.
Primarily, the incentives that encourage Nigerians to save, Nigerians to invest, are the same thing that will encourage the foreigners. And you can say we have to add a little bit more because they have to come from a distance. They have to go over tariff, non-tariff barriers, and of course exchange and other restrictions, which are some of the things we are trying to remove. So while you can, in a general sense, say that of course it's good to go to Moscow or to go to Buenos Aires or to Brasilia, anywhere, and encourage investors to come. Those investors that will come clearly are those who are showing interest in your origins, in your destination, in your own market environment. So what I'm really saying is that, yes, those efforts are laudable, but they need to be built more on how we are creating the enabling environment, whether it is for the domestic investors or for the foreign investor. From issues of security to issues of infrastructure, power, transportation, communications, the whole business where people expect to go to a country and they can stay safely in hotels, they can move about without undue fears of their own personal safety. These are our own problems to fix. Well, we do not have to do it first before we start to ask for foreign investment. But we certainly have to make sure that we reach a certain threshold in the attraction that we put out for those who will be coming from beyond our borders. Yes, and I agree that lately we seem to be putting undue emphasis on how much we are clinking glasses in London and Washington and Paris, but I suggest that we should be as concerned with how we are facing the political issues, the constitutional issues, the economic issues, the infrastructural issues, the judiciary questions, a whole lot of questions that people see on the front pages of their newspapers or on their television. It is the combination of these factors that goes far beyond the nice language that you use in spinning the stories about how attractive we are, where we have comparative advantage in as a destination for investors from abroad. So we need to be doing those things simultaneously, but certainly in our own situation where Nigeria was considered a very attractive destination in the 60s and 70s. Primary sectors, even produce exports were growing very fast. But as the economy advances, as we are moving into more manufacturing and so on, we are getting competition from other producers within the region, within the sub-region of Africa, and certainly within the general underdeveloped countries, where people are all struggling to sell to countries like China and India. And it is sad that up to now, we seem to be doing almost the opposite, where we are now complaining we are being flooded by Indian and Chinese goods. They should not be able to do that if we produce more efficiently. Simple. We should, in fact, be doing the opposite. We should be the ones flooding with all that we can produce. They still constitute a small minority of their own demand. So that gives us a lot of latitude to use more efficient methods to produce whatever we are producing, from primary to secondary, and even services sectors, like we are seeing we are doing in the film industry, in other heavy manpower propelled IT, and so on and so forth. We are doing well in some of those sectors. So the sum total is that, yes, we should ask for foreign investors, but should take every care to make our own environment in a very sustainable way more attractive for those funds that will flow from overseas into our power sector, into our transport sector, and so on and so forth. We should be building fast, wide gauge trains all over the country, not just in a small section of the country. I served as transport minister. That was the essence of our mass transit program, to build railways, wide gauge, all the way, say, Lagos to Calabar. And the same thing from Lagos all the way to the old Borneo extension, to Zambeza Forest, or whatever you call it, where all these people hide to kidnap our pupils here and there. We should have opened up the economy through investment in infrastructures. And when you are doing this, the question of you are overburdened doesn't arise, because people can see the level of investment that will be required to open up all these places that will now be the vehicle for paying over the medium and long-term debts that you can demand, even at our level of indebtedness. It is the object of that new investment that will be the thing that will propel investors from coming to your assistance, of course, in consonance with our own domestic savings and so on and so forth.
Which raises the question of the debt burden that Nigeria has. The most recent report says that our total debt may be up to 118.37 trillion in the next 3 years, based on some of the issues that are arising. I hope you can hear me, Dr. Kalu. So what we understand is that, according to data, Nigeria's government plans to borrow 7.81 trillion naira in 2024. Slightly less than the targeted 8.84 for the same year previously, and we plan to service the debt with 29.92 trillion naira in 3 years. So what are your thoughts about our borrowing, our debt burden, in a way that may or may not hinder the economy from growing?
Well, I especially addressed this question in my last answer. What I said in sum is that despite what may seem to be nominally a high rate of indebtedness, whether in relation to government revenues, or in relation to our export earnings, or in relation to our gross domestic product, for incremental borrowing, if you are able to show that you have the administrative structure and the discipline to parry your costs against your returns, we are not overborrowed. As I just said, you can see areas where, for an economy with our endowment, we need to make sizable investment in naira and in foreign exchange. Of course, agriculture is one of them, power, railroads, and other forms of transportation, certainly the oil and gas. And there are other key areas in the whole matrix where anybody who is going to lend money, who is weighing the cost of lending and the returns to their lending. So we can take our eyes away from the quantum size of the nominal debt burden in relation to the indicators I already, and focus on all those areas that will create jobs, that will create production in the medium and long term. You can go out to the multilateral lenders that will give you a sizable grace period, lower interest rates, and overall a low grant element in your total borrowing, which suggests that you have borrowed well. That is in terms of the interest payments and the repayment period amortization in relation to the returns that you are going to be getting to cover the cost of borrowing and also create reinvestable surplus that you can now reinvest in the medium and long term. So this is where we are. It requires a very empirical analysis of the situation. We are not in a plus or minus or no or yes, blunt, quick answers. No, it requires a thorough study of the whole financial system, of the potential for expanding areas that have implicit high growth in them. And you can, for Nigeria, it's just about every sector. So rather than focus so much on the burden, we should focus on reducing the waste, reducing the endemic corruption. I think we should be able to call it ourselves. So this is the language they want to hear, that we can come out clean and acknowledge some of these shortcomings. So when you now say, see, we know where we are, we know where we need to go, we have X funds, we need Y funds, so we need to bridge the gap between X and Y. So we need short-term funds for our operators, we need a longer term for our producers, and so on and so forth. We marshaled a plan to suggest the various terms of new borrowing that we need to do. This is a thing that will push them and just overlook whether your borrowing is up to 20% of GDP or 50% of your export earnings or 90% of your current revenues. The emphasis on putting more on capital as opposed to exhaustive consumption, these are the ratios that we have to watch. And then we are in a position, given our very broad and robust resource endowment in manpower, land, and resources. Yes, absolutely. That's what I've said.
The president has said it needs to go down.
Those are the things that will have positive impact, not just borrowing. The worst thing you want to decide is just to borrowing in the abstract. And the notion of talking about how people will share the money, that is anathema. You can't be saying certain things and expect somebody to come and give you their money when the impression is that the borrower is so foolish as to give you money and you just share it out and you don't perform. That is why you have a membership of the multilaterals, the IMF, the World Bank, the ADB, and other bilaterals who pay as much attention as to what you do and how you expand it over your implementation, disbursements schedule. They don't just give you the money and say we are going to come and recoup our funds without watching how you are putting the money. Well, so a lot of these things are unduly exaggerated in the public discourse.
Well, clearly some very key areas and issues and points that you have raised. So we do appreciate your perspective this morning, Dr. Kalu Idika-Kalu. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let's take a look at some messages coming through from you. Professor Enahena sends this one about, I think it's the economy or some policies too. He says the agonizing policies, he's not exactly happy with it. He thinks that the policies are incomprehensible and that the tactics is pushing Nigerians into economic abyss. He thinks Nigerians are becoming poorer by the minute. He goes on, over 20 million Nigerians, in the poverty bracket. He thinks something should be done about this. That's from Professor Enahena.
Tends to be going in the way of GWR this morning. Lady Justice is blindfolded, has a scale in her hand for both sides to put their matter and balance the scale out. Lady Justice does not have an eraser in her hand. Are we about to set a new record by adding an eraser in her hand? True justice must reign.
Festus says there's no doubt that the mistake in Kano, judgment CTC has made the judgment difficult to interpret, and any of the parties can allege manipulation. Clerical mistakes in judgment happens anywhere in the world. The Court of Appeal must be allowed to correct it. So there you go. That's the show today. Thank you all for your time and for letting us be a part of your day today. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Oso. Goodbye.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful and productive day.